Oh yeah, hello Canucks fans and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation brought to you by Greta, a great spot for all games home and away. We were there for the Canucks Army viewing party and we will be there for all of the Canucks Army viewing parties throughout the season. If you missed the first one, you've got another chance. You're going to have a couple more chances. Just minutes from the arena, come by before and after the game or whatever event you're downtown for. With weekly drink specials, Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. I had a fun time last night, Harm. I gotta say, Halloween is so fun. We had our costumes yesterday.
You went
I
trick or
like
treating,
Halloween.
obviously.
Yeah, went trick or treating.
Honestly, I'm not even saying this is a joke. I think you legitimately could have gone in your Woody costume, and people wouldn't have no adults giving you candy would have been like, this guy is not a kid. This guy's not. Yeah, like you look like a kid still. You could pass off.
See, I'm wondering how long I can get away with that for, though, because I've started, and I'm sure you've had this as well, but like I've started to not get ID'd at like restaurants and stuff. And actually, very funny. Our technical producer Jacob Lazar knows one of these stories because we were at dinner with him and his wife, and my fiance was the only one that got ID'd at the table. Like I didn't get ID'd.
Wow.
They didn't get ID'd, and you know my fiance, like she's beautiful, of course, but I don't think I've ever not been. That was the first time that I've ever not been ID'd when she is ID'd. So, yeah, it happened.
I would ID you. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. I would ID you.
Fair enough. I would ID me too. You're supposed to ID if they look under 30. There's no way I look over 30. You know what? Like before, I used to be like, oh, haha, I'm young. But now I'm approaching 25 now. Like I started in this industry when I was 18. So obviously I heard about it a lot when I was really young. I still hear it sometimes, but like, getting married now. And now I'm starting to, when are these comments going to stop about me looking young and being young? I'm kind of enjoying the comments as I get older.
It's not gonna happen anytime soon, because anytime I like run into people in real life or friends who aren't like diehard Canucks fans, or maybe they even are, but they just aren't avid like podcast listeners, but they'll see clips on social media, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. They'll be like, oh yeah, you do that podcast with that guy who looks like he's 15, right?
Perfect. Awesome.
Like again and again.
I'll be sad. But you know what though? I've heard this. I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but I've heard that people who look young, like when they're older, they hit a wall, and all of a sudden when they hit like 28, 30, that range, they start to look like they're in their like mid 40s. So I don't know what's going to happen to me. So we'll see. Keep tuning into Canucks Convo and find out how I age, folks. Let's shift to the Canucks here, Harm. Dakota Joshua spoke. You were at practice today out at UBC. We have some audio from Dakota Joshua. I don't know if we have a video, but Dakota Joshua spoke today. It's his first time speaking since his treatment to come back from testicular cancer, which he discovered late in the offseason. He opened up and said that he went through surgery in early September, and that it was going to be a month and a half until he was recovered from the surgery. That lines up with when he hit the ice again in a non-contact uniform. Today he skated, and it sounds like he's going to, or he is day-to-day. That's what Rick Tocchet said. And he said it's not about coming back when he's comfortable. It's about coming back when he knows he can make an impact and be a positive influence on the team. Let's hear from Dakota Joshua today.
Dakota, a few full sessions now with the team. Just tell us how you're feeling, where you're at.
I'm feeling good. I'm getting better every day. Obviously, it's been a tough road to get back in the mix, but no, it's going good, and just happy to be back out there and getting after it with the guys.
How close do you feel to being able to come back?
I feel better every day. It's still hard to really pinpoint when that time will be, but more so just making those strides and getting better every day is where I'm at.
Take us through what you've been through over the last few months and the support system you've leaned on to get through it.
I mean, it's really hard to put in words. Kind of something that you can't really be prepared for, but the support from my family, friends, the fans, the organization as a whole, like, everybody's been so nice and very caring, which I love to see, and made the tough time a lot easier.
How important has it been for you to be around the team over the last
Yeah. It means a lot. Obviously, not getting to participate in training camp and be there through the start of the season, it's not fun, but just to be around the guys and go on the road trips and hang out and have laughs goes a long way.
Yeah, so again, he's talked about being out on the road. We know he's going to be on this upcoming road trip as well. Good to hear from Dakota Joshua. And Talkett spoke later about how much of an impact he can make, especially when you look at what's plagued this team. Like, everything that's hurt them so far are things that Dakota Joshua is going to be able to help with.
Yeah, and I also thought it was interesting that Talkett described Joshua as a systems guy, that when you're, let's say, on a forecheck defensive zone situation, like whatever part of the ice you're in, doesn't matter if it's like a breakout on the defensive half wall or you don't have the puck and it's on the forecheck or defensive zone, whatever it is, he's a guy that you can trust that 9 times out of 10 he's going to be in the right position, that he's going to be in the right spot. And he said there are only a few or a handful of players on the team that can consistently be that type of reliable presence. And especially as the Canucks are trying to rediscover the foundation of their game to really get back to their identity, to be solid enough from a two-way perspective, Joshua's presence and just his overall reliability is going to, I think, be helpful in helping them get back on track from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to help them get back on track. And that's important. That's an important thing. A guy we haven't heard from in a while. Speaking of people we haven't heard from in a while, Frank Seravalli joins us on today's show, and he is brought to you by our friends over at the Vancouver Whitecaps. A great effort with a couple bounces going the wrong way had the Whitecaps fall to LA in game one of their first round matchup in the 2024 MLS Cup playoffs. Come out and support the Whitecaps on their MLS Cup playoff run. Game 2 of the best of 3 series with LAFC is this Sunday at 5:45 p.m. at BC Place. Tickets for this playoff match are on sale now. Click the link in our episode description or go to ticketmaster.ca/Whitecaps to come out, support the boys, and watch some good old-fashioned football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, 5:45 p.m. BC Place. Let's hear from him. Frank Seravalli joins us now, Daily Faceoff's hockey insider from a hotel room in Boston. Frank, thanks so much for joining us today. How you been? We haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah, I'm good. Good to be back with you guys. Been too long, so happy to do that and to be seen. And yeah, I've been hot on the Dakota Joshua story. I reported earlier today on Daily Faceoff Live that Saturday not going to happen, but I think next week, I think potentially that Thursday game looks pretty good for him to come back. So either Tuesday or Thursday, sometime next week for Dakota Joshua is very likely.
Frank, we were just talking about it, but just the impact that he's going to make on the Canucks lineup, especially with what they've struggled with so far this year. Just everything he's been through. This is our first chance to talk to you since he came out with his cancer diagnosis. Just like, what is Dakota Joshua going to bring to this team when he gets back?
He brings a presence first and foremost. He's a worker, and that really matters to Rick Tocchet and his coaching staff. He's someone that is dependable, which is also really important. You know what you're getting from Dakota Joshua night in and night out. Might not always be the most talent, but he's bringing his effort every night, which is, if you're talking about abilities, dependability, reliability are two of the biggest abilities that you can have in the NHL, because everyone has ability. So when you look at him coming back, I wonder if he really, I don't think he cures some of the issues that the Canucks face, because I think it'll certainly help. But to me, it's still certainly getting out of their own end is hugely problematic. And that part he can assist with, but he's not behind the goal line moving the puck up more often than not. So that's where they need help.
Speaking of those breakout issues, back end issues, it was interesting to see Timothy Liljegren had sort of fallen out of favor in Toronto, looked like a potentially distressed asset, not on a great contract, and yet the Leafs are still able to get positive value. They got a 3rd and a 6th round pick for him. Does that tell you anything about how you expect the D market to shape up, where maybe there is expected to be a shortage of decent defensemen, and that it may be a seller's market there?
I would hesitate to call it positive value. I would really, if anything, we're talking neutral. Like, those assets aren't helping the Leafs. They didn't have to pay. They didn't have to retain. Maybe old friend Matt Benning could, fill in on spot duty if need be. But with Yanni Hakanpää coming back, the Leafs, they had to get moving. So they had exactly one team on the line in San Jose. They had other teams that had cursory conversations, but no one that put anything on the table outside of San Jose, and the Leafs had to act while they still had someone on the line. So their roster situation kind of forced their hand, but in terms of the holistic view of the market, Harm, I think it's really more of, I don't want to say an indictment, but it's really more of an indication of where the rest of the league sees Timothy Liljegren's game at this point. The market will be incredibly thin, and at the end of the day is still a 25-year-old right shot defenseman that had shown promise at some point, calendar year ago. But the book was out, and I think San Jose is like, hey, we could use another guy. We could use someone that has NHL experience. We could use someone that we could potentially rehab their game. And by the way, we really it's not a detriment for them that he had term on his deal. It's a positive because they've still got to fill out their lineup again next season. So they don't have to pay much in order to get a guy that they might be able to turn around. So I think that's sort of the total perspective on the deal.
Frank, it's our poll question today. Do you think the Canucks are going to make a trade for a defenseman? You talked about their struggles moving the puck out of their own end. Do you think they're going to make a trade for a defenseman before December 1st?
Well, I don't want to put a timeline on it of December 1st, but I think they're going to be trading for a defenseman in the foreseeable future. I'll say that. And it's for the reasons that I mentioned. Their inefficiency moving the puck. It's a staple, non-negotiable of Rick Tocchet's system and structure. And it really significantly erodes once you get past the first pair of this defense core. Now, in the very short term, and this is part of the reason why I don't want to put a timeline on it, Patrick Allvin has been making calls around the league. There's zero doubt about that. He is the league's most aggressive general manager, and he's always looking to make this team better, which is such a feather in this organization's cap. But for right now, their focus is to get their full complement of players on the ice. I mean, that's the other thing about this year. And I guess say what you want about Derek Forbort, but they haven't had a healthy full roster with Dakota Joshua and Forbort and everyone in the lineup yet. So let's see what that looks like. And then the Canucks are going to assess from there.
Frank, what have you heard about the organization's, like, where are they at in terms of their concern level with Elias Pettersson, and what do they think needs to happen for him to get back on track?
I mean, there's zero doubt that there is a level of concern. How high that is, I couldn't pinpoint because you're never going to get an honest answer. That said, this now stretches and spans over 2 seasons. The levels and acceptable excuses are kind of out the window now. It's not about finding better players to play with him or the knee or whatever it might have been at some point that you might have been able to ask or raise a question or concern about. It is one guy who's making $11.6 million a year for the next 7 years after this one that cannot be a passenger and needs to be a driver. He's had quite clearly a crisis of confidence. He's someone that makes the routine play look more difficult. And frankly, he's someone that looks disengaged. I don't know if that's a polite way to say it, but I think when you look at his game, to me, the way that he throws away pucks, the way that he doesn't at times engage in battles, and a sort of soft approach to play around the net, this isn't the guy we all know and watched burst into this league and become a force. This isn't a guy that would snipe corners instead of throw muffins onto the net. I don't know what happened. I can't give you a reason or explanation, but there's no doubt that at this point, basically 40 games into a sample size now, that the Canucks would be concerned.
Yeah, It's a heavy topic of conversation on our show.
You
In
don't
recent
say.
weeks. Yeah, I keep looking. Like, we just dove into his NHL Edge data yesterday over at Canucks Army. Our pal Jeff Patterson kind of looked at it. Like, the skating, and you say disengaged. Someone in our chat said that's the perfect way to put it. Disengaged. Like, again, I wonder about the injuries, right? Like, we've heard about the wrist for a while. We've obviously heard him talk about his knee as well last year. Like, I wonder about those, but the NHL Edge data doesn't really lie. Like, he's not skating with the same speed. He's not skating with the same bursts over 20 miles per hour, and that's just undeniable at this point. That he's just not looking like the same player that we know. Anything you want to add about the injury theory or anything?
No, not so much about the injury. I mean, look, I've been super clear about the way people felt in the aftermath of what he said. They were flabbergasted, and they were like, that doesn't explain what we saw. So, and also not a valid excuse. Do you really think the Canucks would have put their prized $90+ million player in harm's way and continued to play him? That's crazy talk. And I want to be clear about one thing that I said. When I say disengaged, I don't want someone to misinterpret that and think that I'm saying that he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that at all. In fact, I think part of what might be his issue, if I were to diagnose it from 2,400 miles away, is it's almost like he cares too much about what his game looks like, what people say about him, what coverage like this appears like. I just don't know how you fix that. Like, we are past the point of no return when it comes to wanting to sign up to be part of that and be in the mix. And I didn't really see any of that the first chunk of his career. Like, why would that pop up now, if that makes any sense?
That's fair.
Looking at the team as a whole, still really early, less than 10 games in, but what's your initial take on what you've seen from the Canucks so far and sort of viewing them league-wide? Are you on board with them as a Stanley Cup contender, or are you a little bit less bullish on them? How do you rate them so far?
Not on board with them as a Stanley Cup contender. First off, and just for clarity, and in case anyone wants to say I'm a Canucks hater, I'm not. I honestly don't care who wins or loses. This job is way stressful enough without that. I would say I keep a really small circle of 5 teams at any given time. It's living, breathing. We started a new segment on Daily Faceoff Live at the end of every month, the inner circle. Who's in that circle? The Canucks aren't one of 5 teams right now that are in that for me. And any honest, objective Canucks fan would probably nod and agree and say, I got you. Holistically, right now, this Canucks team is not as good as they were last year. They're not as good as the team that ended in Game 7. They're not as good as the team even before Patrick Allvin really started making a ton of moves. They have upside and promise. They've had a fantastic story with Kevin Lankinen. They are competitive. They are a 100-point team. They are a firm playoff team, but they've got some work to do to get into that next echelon of teams.
Do you think, like, and again, I'm not going to ask you to go out and say, okay, they got to do this, this, and this, but, like, how far are they from that? Like, are they a top 4 defenseman away from being in that inner circle? And I mean, obviously you got to see more from your star players as well, and I'm sure that goes into your evaluation, but, like, how far away are they?
Yeah, at least one, and probably like a healthy Thatcher Demko.
Fair.
Not to say Kevin Lankinen can't help or can't carry the ball or whatever it might be. I guess goalies have won the cup that have his skill set for sure. I think it's at the very bare minimum, one more top 4 defenseman, and preferably someone, again, with all the attributes that we just talked about. It's not just skating fast. It's moving the puck fast. It's being quick with your mind. It's you can't just be big. You can't just be Vinny Desharnais. And I said that Go watch any of the Oilers coverage. Anyone that said he was getting a massive deal in the summer, I just said he has serious limitations. And you guys have seen that already to start the year, and they're working with him, and he could get better, and maybe he turns a corner. But you probably are what you are at a certain point when you're that age and you're that big. So I didn't, no revisionist history here. Everything that I just said to you is exactly what I said in my season preview. There have been some really good moments to start and some really ugly moments. And I think everyone probably feels a little different about this team. Had they not blown 2 third-period leads to start the season, you have a little bit more of a cushion. And I think generally just the record feels a little bit better. But I linked up with the Canucks in Chicago. I watched them as they came out east. They definitely looked a lot better. But it's going to be consistency that wins the day. And they're not at that point yet.
Frank, just before we let you go, final one from me. Just from a league-wide perspective, your biggest surprise so far this year? Like, we've talked a lot about the Nashville Predators, but they've started to turn around seemingly. Your biggest surprise to start the new season?
There's a few. One, that the Bruins have been so bad and struggled to score. Did not see this start coming from the Minnesota Wild. I think the LA Kings have exceeded expectations. My guess is, oddly enough, the Oilers probably play better without Connor McDavid for the next couple weeks as they try and get their heads screwed on straight. I think everything else kind of is like within the parameters of like what the mean would look like, if that makes any sense. There's always outliers here or there. It's still kind of reaction season. It's hard to get hyped up about anything in the first month of the year when you know that so many vets in this league they don't really start playing for keeps until November. But we're there now. And these things, starts of seasons for the first 3 weeks, you could be anything. The Calgary Flames looked like they weren't going to lose. But after you get a month in, I think things really start to bake in and crystallize in terms of what you end up being.
Harmon and I made a bet. I bet that the Flames would make the playoffs.
You bet what?
I bet that the Flames would make the playoffs after their start. I was like, they're going to sneak in.
And it was like even odds. Like, I didn't have, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't even
quads. Come on.
I was like, this is the easiest bet I'm going to win in my life.
Our bet last year.
Yeah, we still got to. Are you planning on coming out to Vancouver during the season, or are you waiting
at some
until
point.
playoffs? Okay, cool. I'm not looking forward to it. For those that don't remember, Frank and I, what was our bet, Frank? What did we bet? Actually, I can't remember. All I know is I get a
pied or something.
I know I get pied, but I don't remember what we bet. Like, was it another lopsided one where I probably
you said the Canucks were going to win the series.
Ah, yes. Game 7, they get Brock Besser. Maybe things are different. I don't know. Anyways, Harmon, go ahead.
One more from me. I'm curious to get your take on like who your inner circle is as far as contenders and whether they're in it or not. I also would love to get your take on Vegas, their hot start, and are you buying them as? I mean, they're a team that I think sort of got overlooked heading into the season, maybe because of some of the forward talent that they lost, and yet they've been scoring a pile of goals.
Yeah, so that's the perfect segue to my inner circle because Vegas is in there. I think they're a really good team. I think they've got the horses to be there. I think they've got value goaltending in their tandem. There's really not much and they might honestly to this point in the season might have the best line in hockey. They're formidable like they are, and they've won before, so they understand. So Vegas, I still have Edmonton in there, even with the start. I have the Rangers, I have Winnipeg, and
Calgary.
Yeah, no, that's not it. And I have the Dallas Stars. So interestingly enough, no one from the Atlantic yet. And people were like, I'm sure people would hear that and say, well, Florida, like 2 straight cups off to a fine start this season. What's your issue with the Panthers? They've been pretty mercurial this year, hot and cold. I know their record's good, but they've had some ugly nights. It is impressive that they've played well without Barkov when he was out and Matthew Tkachuk for a couple games. I'm still I don't know how they've made magic with it, but I'm still not a believer in Florida's defense after Ekblad or Montour and Ekman Larson departed. So still, I think jury out. A lot of hockey played by the Panthers, but could certainly find themselves into that living, breathing list soon.
Frank, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and we will chat with you soon for sure. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, good to see you guys. Have a good one.
There he is, Frank Seravalli, over at Daily Faceoff. You can read his work and, of course, the DFO Rundown podcast as well on Daily Faceoff Live. He just talked about his inner circle there. I think that's a really interesting segment idea, Harmon, to kind of go through who your top 5 teams are. And he said, like, it's an ever-changing list. I was a little surprised to see him say he had the Oilers in there still, but look, like, the Oilers are playing good without McDavid. Like, they're going to get a boost when they get McDavid back. And I know it's only one game, but the Oilers were really impressive last night in that game. So, anyways, let's get to our poll question, which is powered by Square. If you run a restaurant, you're too busy for this ad read. You're thinking about how to get more orders flowing and new locations opening. You need to get more customers and keep them coming back. So really, you're already thinking about Square, because Square Restaurant Tech helps more than 400,000 restaurants do all those things and more. So when you're thinking about your restaurant, think bigger and think Square. Go to square.ca and see why Square is big in restaurants. Our poll question today: will the Canucks trade for a top 4 defenseman before December 1st? 65.4% of voters say yes, 34.6% say no. I'm going with yes here. Like, I know Frank didn't want to put a timeline on it, but I'm putting my chips on yes here. Like, I think it's going to be something that they do. They traded for Nikita Zadorov on November 30th. Ethan Bear was October 28th. Again, I think the nature of their November schedule probably means that they can kick the can down the road a bit. Like, they're still going to win games. They're going to win games against teams like San Jose, like Anaheim, hell, even LA as well, this California road trip. I think the problems need to become a little bit more exaggerated. If they had more games against the Hurricanes and Devils, I think they make a trade sooner, but they don't. They don't. We talked about the November schedule on yesterday's show as well. So I'm going to say that yes, they make the trade, but I originally was going to put November 15th. I think it's going to be a late November trade.
I lean a little bit towards no, and that's not because of a lack of appetite from the Canucks part, but just because, like, the distinction there is a top 4 defenseman. And when you look at Zadorov and Bear, neither one of them was a true, no questions asked, like, surefire top 4 defenseman. Like, even Nikita Zadorov was playing third pair in Calgary, and we know that he's sort of been a number 5 defenseman for most of his career. And Ethan Bear obviously wasn't a bona fide top 4 defenseman either. So if you're going to be chasing a more premium target, then chances are that those teams aren't necessarily going to be in a rush to dangle those guys and start the fire sale really early.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. When are you going to start? When are teams going to start really making trades of real value? And again, the Flames, don't count them out just yet. Let's get to tomorrow's preview, Harm. It's a Friday show today, but just ahead of anyone else, I want to quickly talk about the San Jose Sharks. They're not very good. We knew that going into this year, but one guy I did want to highlight, Jake Wallman. Have you seen the start he's gotten off to?
Yeah.
Like, man, the Yzer plan in Detroit, like, holy cow, the Wings are cooked. The Wings just, I don't want to say they have no direction because they're clear. Well, I don't even want to say clearly, because no, they're not clearly trying to rebuild. Like, some of the moves they've made just make no sense. Like, I think we can say that. The decisions they've made have made no sense at times, and this Jake Wallman trade is looking like a really good one for the Sharks, and right from the start, everybody said this was a weird one for the Wings, and it's really coming back to bite them so far.
Yeah, the fact that they had to pay a second-round pick to get off his contract, and just seeing, it's not just that, oh, he's put up a pile of points.
It's first pair minutes. Like, it's first pair minutes, and he's effective.
Not only that, but, like, even analytically, like, he's somehow surviving and not getting crushed, which says a lot considering how brutal that Sharks environment is. And Detroit's blue line, outside of Seider and Edvinsson, has been a tire fire. So absolutely the Wings could use Jake Wallman. And I still think with the number of blue chip prospects that the Wings have on the way, now they don't have anybody coming in that projects to be a true superstar. And that's always been my worry with the Red Wings, is who's your Quinn Hughes? Who's your, like, peak version of Elias Pettersson? Who's your, like, JT Miller? I guess you could say that Larkin at his best can maybe be close, be close to that level. But outside of that, outside of him and Raymond, just like not enough high end talent. But they'll still have some pieces coming along the way, like Nate Danielson, Sandin Pellikka. But yeah, I mean, I think they're sort of on a path to the mushy middle for the next few years, where they're going to be, I think, good enough to maybe be a playoff team as some of these prospects develop and they start to get more impactful contributions from them. But because they also have veterans on some undesirable contracts, they're not going to have the cap space to really go out and make a ton of high profile acquisitions to really get them to like true contender status.
Nick Pocek in the chat. Maybe the Canucks can get more at Cider quick before Yzerman gets fired.
Stop it. No chance.
And with that wonderful contribution from regulars in the show, Nick Pocek, let's get to anyone else. It's your chance to be involved, folks. It's anyone else, and it is presented by White Spot. At White Spot, they're all about enjoying great, comforting food and spending quality time with loved ones. With the new comfort menu, White Spot is focusing on cozy, satisfying flavors that are perfect to enjoy with family. Available now and developed by the White Spot culinary team, the comfort menu is filled with warm, indulgent dishes designed to make you feel right at home. The new menu features mouthwatering new additions like mini Yorkies, the braised beef burger, the homestyle pot roast, and backed by popular demand, the iconic chicken pot pie. Bring your family to White Spot for a delicious meal, perfect for the season. Visit your local White Spot today. Updates from me. The White Spot food truck, I can't get it at the wedding because we're out in Chilliwack for the wedding. As you guys obviously know, their limit was Abbotsford. So heartbreaking, but we can't get the White Spot food truck at the wedding. But that being said, I did just book a family reunion. Table for 30. Well, not one table, multiple tables for 30 at a White Spot. So that also happened yesterday. So those are my White Spot updates of the day for me personally. Speaking of updates, Harm, Canucks practice day out at UBC. Looks like the same line combinations. That was kind of my takeaway from the Canucks practice today. DeBrusk with Miller and Besser, Arshdeep Bains with Elias Pettersson and Connor Garland. Dakota Joshua skated as an extra, and then obviously we know that those lines are going to be the same for tomorrow's game. I think the bigger surprise for me was Eric Brandstrom and Noah Juleson sticking together. I thought they had a pretty off night, and I thought we might see Juleson come out of the lineup. You never take Eric Brandstrom out of the lineup. I've said that from the start, and I'll keep saying it. Keep Brandstrom, keep Brandstrom forever. But I thought Juleson might get taken out. We'll see if that changes for tomorrow's game, but it looks like, at least for now, the Canucks are going to go with the same lineup against the Sharks tomorrow. Any surprise from you when it comes to that?
Free Hoglander is my message. I want to see him back in the top six. Again, nothing against Arshdeep Bains, but free Nils. And not
Nils.
Oman. That's like, let's obviously didn't mean Nils Oman there when I said free Nils.
Hashtag free Nils, not Oman. Free Nils. I love it. Okay, another thing that I had here, just for anyone else. Jacob, do we have these photos? Canucks had their Halloween party last night. This has got to be one of the first years that the Canucks have been able to have their Halloween party on Halloween. Usually it's, in the days before, after, because they got to be home or whatever. Did you see JT Miller? We wrote about it at Canucks Army. Shout out to Ariel Lalonde over at Canucks Army. She wrote about the Halloween party, and she messaged and just said, can I just make the title like, how TMZ or Pop Crave or whoever would be like, breaking news, celebrity stuns at Met Gala or whatever.
Yeah.
She's like, can I just make the title JT Miller stuns at Halloween party? I was like, absolutely you can. So that was our title of the article over at Canucks Army. Did you see it? Did you see what he was wearing?
I saw it. That was pretty funny. See, that's why great. I voted Miller for in Family Feud yesterday for Halloween costumes.
But did JT put in this?
It doesn't matter. He came with a high effort costume. Doesn't matter if it was him. Doesn't matter if it was his wife. That was a great costume.
And his wife, shout out to Natalie Miller. She absolutely big fan of Canucks Army, Natalie Miller. She's always sharing Canucks Army stuff, which I appreciate. But Natalie Miller, huge shout out to her. The Austin Powers costume, right down to the teeth, was so perfect. Like it was such a well put together costume, and it's hilarious. It's so funny. Yeah, shout out to Natalie Miller. I think Canucks fans are big fans of Natalie Miller with the content that she shares. We heard the Go Dada stuff that she was sharing when the Canucks were in the bubble, and now we get more great content courtesy of Natalie Miller. So shout out to Natalie Miller, man. Just quick shout out to Natalie Miller. But the Canucks Convo listeners got it right. I hate to say it on Family Feud because it's also Brock Besser's costume. They did a group costume. It was Brock and his girlfriend, Petey and his girlfriend, and then Quinn Hughes dressed as Scooby-Doo as the Scooby-Doo crew. Oh, it was great. It was such a good costume. And Brock Besser, man, like dressed as Fred, he looks so much like Fred. Like he looks perfectly cast as Fred. In fact, so much so that I would go as far to say that a movie that had such great casting, the live-action Scooby-Doo movie, as I'm sure you know, they had wonderful casting for that movie. They crushed it. The guy who played Fred in that movie, I'm sorry, Brock Besser's a better Fred. Brock Besser is a better Fred than the guy who actually played Fred in the Scooby-Doo movie.
I wish I had something to add, but I never watched it, so.
Honestly, like people might back me up on this, but I think like it was good casting in that movie, but Brock Besser looks like a better Fred. I'm sorry, Jacob, you can clip this, put it out to the masses, add photos. I will go to bat. And again, I think one of the questions was which Canuck has the best chance at an acting career after their career. Brock Besser. Just like put Brock Besser in front of a camera. Might have to, go over the lines with him a little extra. I'm not sure how much experience he has memorizing lines and everything, but like he looks more like Fred than the guy who played Fred, and I will go to bat for Brock Besser saying that. Let's get to something about Brock Besser as well as we shift away from Halloween costumes. Luke Christopher in the YouTube live chat said, will they reunite the Lotto line anytime soon? Maybe it'll help Petey get going like arm. I don't know the answer to this. The time to do it is when you're playing these bad teams in the Sharks and Ducks. Like that's the time to do it, right? Is when you want to load up a top line and then you know that your depth's going to be able to withstand even if you're loading up, quote unquote. Like I don't know if it's a long-term option, though, because Rick Tocchet just hasn't liked the Lotto line. So much so that he doesn't even like calling it the Lotto line.
Well, also, Teddy Bluger becomes your second-line center.
Yeah.
Like, how long can you survive with that? So, no, I'm not...
But quickly, though, Harm. Like, Teddy Bluger becomes your second-line center, yes. But, like, his line mates, they've played like a second line.
They've played like a good third line. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's Danton Heinen and Kiefer Sherwood.
Okay, but that crushes the Sharks and Ducks second lines.
Yeah, and then what happens when you play like any half-decent team?
That's fair. Again, that I don't necessarily agree with it, but the question was like, oh, maybe it'll get Petey going.
It's honestly like it's not like a bad question or thought. I just don't think that the Canucks are deep enough at center to experiment with it.
Fair enough. Let's get to another one here. Okay. Nar with another great question. Nar, regular listener of the show. Recent developments in gene editing technology have resulted in Connor Garland arriving to the 2025-26 training camp at 6'3", 225 pounds. Who are his new player comparables? Mark Stone comes to mind immediately for me, Harm.
Yeah, but also he'd be a completely different player at 6'3", 225 in the sense that, like, yeah, people's immediate thoughts are, oh, like what a monster he could be, but
you're no longer ducking. You're no longer ducking.
Yeah, like he's so shifty. He's so hard to contain because he's able to get underneath guys the way that he's able to just like turn on a dime, the edge work. Like you'd lose a lot of that agility at 6'3", 225, which is part of what makes him so successful. So, I mean, I don't even know what comparable to come up with because he would fundamentally change as a player, even as far as like losing some of his strengths.
Can I give you another take here? And this is a question from Nar. He said, would you give up Tom Willander to acquire Rasmus Andersson? And I know I'm a big Rasmus Andersson guy, and I said like last week, give up whatever it takes. Here's a take I've recently had, Harm. It doesn't make much sense for the Canucks to go all in on this team if Elias Pettersson doesn't turn it around. Is that a fair take?
Yeah.
Like, I've started to have that thought where I'm like, yeah, go get Rasmus Andersson, go get everything. It's like, if Elias Pettersson's going to be your third-line center or playing like a third-line center, it doesn't even make sense. Like, we've talked about this team's window and Quinn Hughes, and, you got to strike before Quinn's next contract, and that's all fair, but if Elias Pettersson's going to play like this, and I'm not trying to push the panic button, but I have had the thought of where I'm talking about, yeah, go get Rasmus Andersson in November, get him as soon as possible, whatever. like I've recently had the thought of, if you don't know what Elias Pettersson's going to look like come March, don't go out and go all in on this team. Like, you need those guys. You need those Tom Willanders. You need those Jonathan Lecker-Mackey. Hell, you need first round picks. Like, if you're going to extend your window, your shift totally change. Your window totally changes, I think, of when you're actually going all in if Elias Pettersson's not holding up his end of the bargain.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean you stand pat and don't do anything, but it means that there's a line for what you're responsibly willing to give up to get what you want to upgrade the team. So, and right, you're right. That's another sort of reason for being sort of patient with this team and sort of letting things play out so you have a more clear idea. Like, as much as Rutherford and Alvin have this history of very quickly making moves early in the season, and I suspect that they'll still try and make something happen. I don't think that they should necessarily feel that they need to be in a rush to make something happen sooner rather than later, because the longer that a season sort of goes on and you enter November, December, you're going to gain a lot more information about your individual players, about your roster strengths and weaknesses, and how confident you can be that is this a year to go all in, especially because, like, again, Thatcher Demko is still a major question mark, and Kevin Lankinen's had a great start, but is he going to maintain a .920 save percentage the entire season? And that's not to say that goaltending would all of a sudden become a need that you need to go out and get a goaltender. But if Kevin Lankinen is closer to, let's say, just an average goaltender, there goes that edge. There goes another edge. And are you then looking at your team and going, maybe this isn't the year to really spend big assets? So, yeah, good take to bring up, Quads.
All right. First time I've heard that in a while. Hachiroku in the chat. He said, do you guys think Brandstrom will slowly develop into a 4-5 defenseman over the span of this season and entering the playoffs? Harm, you can answer this one, because obviously I think he's going to be a top 1-2 league-wide. But no, in all seriousness, like, is there that chance that he can usurp Carson Soucy here?
Maybe. It'll be worth a shot at some point, but I'd say it's more likely than not that he is still
I struggle to come out and say something like that personally after what we just saw from him in that 6-0 loss to the Devils. Like, he got exposed a bit in that game.
Well, that's the thing too, is it's consistency, right? Like, 4 or 5 good games doesn't mean you're all of a sudden on track to be a top 4 defenseman. And so that's my take, is like, if it happens, that's a nice surprise. That's found money, but that's not what I'm hoping or banking on. For me, so long as Brandstrom can be, like, you're already winning if he's a reliable puck moving number 16 man. That's already found money.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's a cap dump trade. The big asset for the Canucks was being able to accrue cap space there. In other news, Archie Bains and Eric Brandstrom were recalled today. So just a daily update. At first, I thought we were going to write about it every time at Canucks Army, like do a news article, but I'm like, okay, they're literally doing this every day. Like, this is the 6th time we've seen it, it feels like. So I'm actually curious. I think when the Canucks come back home and practice, I think I want to sit down and just talk to Arsh. Probably I'll talk to Arsh about it, but just like, you don't have to actually drive to Abbotsford when that happens, right? Like, I know it affects, earnings and everything, and I'm not going to get into that part of it, but like, you don't have to drive to Abbotsford each time, right? Like, you know to just stick around at home. And yeah, anyways. But yeah, I did want to get that in there, that he was recalled today, him and Brandstrom. Anything else that you wanted to get to before Bet365, Harm?
Nope.
I just want to quickly add, it's really funny because now when you go to Puckpedia for Brandstrom or Bains, and there's the update section, and it's just Bains was assigned to AHL Abbotsford on Thursday. Bains was recalled from AHL Abbotsford on Friday. Just every single time, it's just Bains was assigned to AHL Abbotsford. Bains was recalled from AHL Abbotsford. So these guys are going to have like a nice long Puckpedia updates page now because of how the Canucks are being creative with their contracts.
Yeah, and they're saving a good chunk of money every day that they do this. So thanks for that, Jacob. Let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, which is brought to you by, you guessed it, Bet365 tonight. The Calgary Flames are taking on the New Jersey Devils. The New Jersey Devils have the audacity to come into our barn. I mean, the Flames barn, and take them on tonight. The Flames are somehow underdogs in this game. Plus 150 odds. You can get the Flames to take down the New Jersey Devils, who are flying high. You know, they probably hit Cowboys last night for their Halloween festivities, right? They're coming off a 6-0 win, feeling good about themselves. The Calgary Flames are going to put a stop to that rather quickly tonight. That was our bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. Great show.
Do the
today,
Flames pay you? Are you on their payroll or something? Like,
no,
what?
but everybody should absolutely read flamesnation.ca. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
We'll close it out there. Good show today, Harm. It was a good week. We'll be back on Monday, folks, to break down the game against the Sharks. 7 p.m. puck drop tomorrow on a hockey night in Canada. We'll close it out there. For my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Jacob Bazar, our thanks again to Frank Seravalli for joining us on today's episode. My name is Dave Gujalli. Fill out the Family Feud survey, folks. And thanks so much for listening to another episode of Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.